Hello, students, and a very warm welcome to all of you. Now, have you ever looked at a map of our country and wondered why some places seem so full of people while others are so empty? Well, today we're going to explore a very fascinating and important topic in geography, the population of India. We'll look at how big it is, where people live, and the really interesting part, why. Let's begin. So, here's the plan for our lesson today. First, we'll start with a big question. Why do people even matter in geography? Then we'll learn about how we count everyone in our country. After that, we'll look at the actual numbers for India, learn about a very useful idea called density, and then we'll solve the puzzle of why our population map looks so uneven. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the main points to remember. All right, let's get started. First things first. Why do we in social studies spend so much time talking about population? Why are these numbers so important? Let's find out. I want you to just pause for a moment and think about this. Imagine our beautiful planet Earth, with its mountains, its rivers, its forests, but no people. Who would use the resources? Who would build the cities and create all our different cultures? You see, it is the people who give meaning to everything around us. And this brings us to a very important idea. Think about it this way. A resource like coal, well, it's just a black rock in the ground, isn't it? It only becomes a resource when people learn how to use it for energy. A big flood in a faraway jungle where nobody lives is just a natural event. It becomes a disaster only when it happens in a town and affects people. So, the most important thing to remember is this. People are at the very center of everything we study in geography. So, if people are so important, how do we get good, reliable information about them? How do we even know how many people there are in our country? And where they all live? Well, this brings us to something very important called the census. So what exactly is a census? Put simply, it's the official process of counting every single person in a country. It's a huge task, a massive exercise, to get a complete picture of who is living in the nation at one particular time. You know, the census actually has a long history in India. The very first one was conducted way back in 1872, but it was in 1881 that the first complete and regular census began. And since that year, just like clockwork, it has been carried out every 10 years. But why go through all this trouble? It's because census data is incredibly important. It gives the government a detailed report card about the people. This information helps our leaders to plan for the country's future. For example, how many new schools do we need to build? Where should we put a new hospital? Where are new roads or railway lines needed the most? The answers to all these big questions come from the data we get from the census. All right, now that we know why we count people and how we do it, let's look at what the numbers actually tell us about India. We'll be using the data from the 2011 census to get a clear picture of our country's population. As of March 2011, India's population was a truly staggering 1,210 million people. That's 1.21 billion. Now, just to help you imagine how big that number is, that's more than the entire population of North and South America put together. It's a massive, massive number. Now this slide shows us something very, very important. It tells us about the pressure on our country's land and resources. Just look at these numbers. India is home to 17.5% of all the people in the world. But we only have about 2.4% of the world's land area. Think about that for a second. That's a lot of people living on a relatively small piece of land. And here's another very interesting fact. These 1.21 billion people are not spread out evenly across the country. Not at all. The distribution is actually highly uneven. In fact, almost half of our entire country's population lives in just 5 states. And here are those 5 states. They are Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Bihar, West Bengal, and Andhra Pradesh. Just look at Uttar Pradesh alone. With 199 million people back in 2011, it is the most populous state in our entire country. So this makes you wonder, doesn't it? Many of us think that if a state is very large, very big in area, then it must have a very large population. But is that really true? Let's find out. Let's look at the facts. Let's take Rajasthan. It is our biggest state when it comes to area, but it has only about 5.5% of India's total population. Now compare that with Uttar Pradesh. It has a whopping 16% of our country's population.
So this clearly tells us that a state's physical size and the number of people living in it are two very different things.
So, to really understand this distribution properly, we need a better tool, a more accurate way of looking at it. And that tool, students, is called population density.
So what is population density? Don't worry, it's a very simple idea. It is simply the number of people living in one unit of area. We usually measure this for every square kilometer. So instead of just looking at the total number of people, density tells us how crowded or how spacious a place really is. And how do we calculate it? Well, it's a very simple formula. Step 1, you find the total population of a place. Step 2, you find the total land area of that place in square kilometers. And step 3, you just divide the total population by the total area. See? It's that simple.
Now, for India as a whole country, the average population density in 2011 was 382 persons per square kilometer. I want you to imagine a square box of land, 1 kilometer long on each side. On average, you would find 382 people living inside that box. But, and this is important, remember that this is just an average. An average can sometimes be misleading. Let me show you why. The reality across India varies a lot. Just look at this incredible contrast. On one hand, you have the state of Bihar with a very high density of 1,102 people per square kilometer. And on the other hand, you have Arunachal Pradesh with a density of only 17 persons per square kilometer. Imagine that. What a huge difference. So this brings us to the big question, the final piece of our puzzle today. Why? Why is the population so unevenly spread out? Why are some parts of our country so crowded while others are nearly empty? Let's explore the reasons. Well, the reasons can be grouped into 2 main types. First, we have what we call physical factors. These are things to do with the land and climate. Think about it. Would it be easy to live and farm on a very steep, rocky mountain or in a very hot and dry desert? Not really. That's why these areas have very few people, or what we call a sparse population. On the other hand, flat plains with good, fertile soil and plenty of rainfall, like our northern plains or Kerala, are perfect for farming and can support a very high population. Then we have the second type, economic factors. Areas that have a lot of industries and big cities offer more jobs and opportunities. This pulls people from villages to the cities in search of work. This movement is called urbanization, and it's a big reason why our cities are often so densely populated. Now let's look at this map of population density together. Can you see the story we just talked about right here on the map? Look for the dark red areas. These show the highest density. You'll see that they cover the northern plains, just as we discussed. And now look for the light-colored areas, which show the lowest density. You'll find them in mountainous places like Arunachal Pradesh or desert areas in Rajasthan. The map is a perfect picture of what we have just learned. Whew, that was a lot of information, wasn't it? So let's do a quick recap of the most important points that you should remember from our discussion today. So, the most crucial points to remember are these. First, that population is at the very center of our study of geography. Second, the census is the official survey that gives us all this important data. Third, India has a very large population that is also very unevenly distributed. Fourth, population density, which is population divided by area, gives us a much better picture of this distribution. And finally, both physical factors, like land and climate, and economic factors, like jobs, decide where people choose to live. And that is all for our lesson today. But you know, the story of population doesn't end here. Population is not fixed, it is always changing. So in our next session, we will explore the very fascinating topic of population growth, why our population changes, and the different reasons behind it. Thank you for your attention, and I will see you next time.